I'm always just full of weird jokes and stuff like that. All right, I'm Elo. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with a whole bunch of things. This reminds me of prison. When Jeff was down here earlier, I was like, that reminded me of jail. It really did. He wanted something visual to talk about boundaries, and I'm prone to always walk around on the stage by looking at my boots, so we figured we'd put some stuff up to show what boundaries are. But I'm going to say something first that Jeff didn't mention. Back in 2012, on the first Monday of that month, was when we kicked off our first Celebrate Recovery meeting. Tonight is the first Monday, but it's not the 6th. But it's still like our birthday, even our birthday falls on Friday this year. So because of people sitting in these seats and struggling and having redemption and having leadership like Pastor Jeff, we've been here now 14 years. That shows dedication not just to Pastor Jeff, but all the other leaders that have come in after him, that have been along by his side. The current group that we have is amazing. They are absolutely, hands down, some of the best people. And I wouldn't be on this stage if it wasn't for every single one of them and the ones before them guiding me, comforting me, encouraging me, putting me in my place when I needed to be in my place, and teaching me lessons. Some of them were hard lessons. Some of them were lessons that I probably should have known, but I just didn't care at the time, but I learned. Some of the biggest ones preluded way before this time of my life, which was learning boundaries. And the biggest thing about that is I didn't have any. I wanted what I want, I did what I did, and I didn't care who I hurt along the way. The biggest person I hurt along that way was me. Because when I joked about standing behind these bars, I put myself in prison, I put myself in jail, I put myself in places that I shouldn't have ever been. But I went for a reason, I learned a lesson, and I don't want to go back. So, tonight, like I said, we're talking about boundaries. I've had plenty of time to do this, especially last week without us not being here. There's 181 of y'all here tonight. You know how scary that is standing on this stage looking at 181 of y'all? Right. Don't lie. Y'all just wanted to get out of the house and finally had the opportunity to do it, so that's why y'all are here tonight. But when Jeff said, hey, we're going to open up the balcony, I almost walked out the door into my truck and went home. But like, here's the paper copy if anybody wants to talk about it. But it's okay. So boundaries define where we end and where others begin. They are invisible lines that protect ourselves with our time, our energy, and our physical space, our emotional well-being, and our recovery. During active struggles with life hurts, habits, and hang-ups, boundaries often become blurred or they disappear entirely. Tonight, this lesson is going to teach us how to establish and maintain healthy boundaries in all areas of our life. The ones I really want to focus on are friendships, family, work, and especially ourselves. Now, I have 16 pages, so hopefully y'all are ready to sit here for a while, but they're big font because I'm getting old, so I have to start to have bigger font because I don't want glasses. So it's really hopefully go by pretty quick. So why do we need boundaries while we're in recovery? The first one is it reduces our exposure to our triggers in any high-risk situations that we put ourselves in. It protects us emotionally and physically. It builds healthier and more respectful relationships. It increases our own self-respect and our own confidence, and that's one that I always struggle with. If you've ever heard me talk, I struggle with myself. I struggle with respecting myself, giving myself confidence, talking better about myself, and encouraging myself. Having boundaries also enables us to prioritize our own needs and our own well-being, and we create a structure of stability for sustainable recovery. So what are boundaries? Boundaries are the limits you set to define what is acceptable and what is not in your friendships, your relationships, or anything like that. It's like an invisible no trespassing sign. They establish personal space, physical and emotional between yourselves and others. So we have to understand some boundaries. Again, boundaries are limits we set to find what we think is acceptable and what is not. I already said that. Why did I duplicate that? I had 2 weeks and I duplicated the same thing twice. Go figure. We needed to hear it twice. That's absolutely right. All right. So here's a couple different types of boundaries. I'm going to joke, but when I made this one and when I was doing research, the first person I thought of was Cindy when I did this one. And it's physical boundaries. Personal space and physical touch. Who can hug you, which in your case, nobody can. Right? Hopefully, Reggie, you're right. But it's a need to have your own physical, personal space that you don't want anybody encroaching on. And sometimes it's for our own physical safety. And then we have the emotional. What feelings and emotions will you accept from others? Not taking other people's problems and putting them on yourself, but learning how to also separate your own moods from other people's. Then you have the mental one, which I thought of myself when I did this one. What am I willing to think and not think? Choosing not to think about other people's opinions and putting so much emphasis on what they say, what they think. Don't let that occupy your mind. Then there's time, another one that I struggle with. I think I have all the time in the world when I'm getting ready in the morning. Next thing you know, it's 10 o'clock and I'm almost late for work. But time is how much we give to other people in our other tasks. How much we work. How much we dedicate to our prayer life. Things like that. And then there's values. Your beliefs, your principles, and your integrity. You're not going to compromise your core values. You're going to stand firm on what matters most. So, we've got a couple different types of boundaries. So we have a hard boundary and we have a soft boundary. The hard boundaries are what we consider non-negotiables. They're mandatory, plain and simple. They're fixed limits that do not change. An example of that is not using, not drinking, not looking at pornography, not tolerating abuse, but maintaining your recovery. Usually, that's an easier thing to defend because it is so important in our lives. And then we have a soft boundary. They can be adjusted as circumstances come and go. They allow for reasonable things to let that boundary be put aside for that little bit of time. But they require a more intentional reinforcement because they are less absolute. So an example of that is, I may limit myself to 40 hours per week, except during critical projects when we might need all hands on deck. Perfect example, I can't make this up today. I help do taxes. I was getting off at 3 o'clock. I was ready to get out the door. Then we had a few things happen. And then it's 4 o'clock, and my boss was like, what time do you need to leave? I was like, well, I was hoping an hour ago. But we had so many people waiting, and it was just going to be him in the office, and I realized that if I do that, that's not just hurting him, it's hurting our customers. So, I know that's a boundary that I'm going to let happen for one day, hopefully. If it happens again next week, Aaron, we're in trouble, all right? There's too much going on, if you're watching, thanks. So, that's kind of an example of a soft boundary. So we're going to talk about, first and foremost, boundaries in work, since I just was talking about that. We've got to put boundaries at work because it helps our physical health. It helps our mental health. It helps prevent burnout, and it helps maintain a good work-life balance. A common work boundary challenge could be being asked to work beyond your schedule or anything like that, kind of stuff that I talked about. But we have to remember there are some key boundaries that we need to consider. Obviously, we talked about time. But what you put on yourself while you're at work. How much you going to take? Are you going to let them keep putting so much on you? And if you've ever been a server, you know how that goes sometimes. If you've been a server, you know that they're just going to keep slamming you and slamming you. Even though you might be cut, they're going to keep putting people on you sometimes. But you got to learn that balance. Because if you take too much stress on, that's not going to affect just you, but it's going to affect the people that you're serving. That's going to affect the people that you're talking to. It also is going to affect your relationships, both emotionally with your coworkers and physically in areas. They can read when you're mad. They can see it in your body language you walk in the door. But you've got to participate. You can't participate in like that workplace gossip. You can't have a whole bunch of those personal conversations. Emotional labor and taking on others' stress can be very vulnerable to yourself, because then we also know that gossip is a sin, and we're not supposed to do that. So, when we're talking about things at work, we make sure that we have to have some boundaries. Some of them are, again, like we said, what is your responsibility versus others? When are you going to delegate and handle yourself? What are your expectations? And what will you or won't you do if you're asked to do certain things? But you have to also learn how to communicate. And if anybody knows me, sometimes they know I have a hard time communicating. I get flustered, I start twisting my words, I can't talk sometimes. And it all depends on how I've processed things. And if I don't process it the right way, then it comes off the wrong way. And that affects things, not just for that day or that week, but for a long time. And it really puts a stress on things. So how do you communicate better? You've got to be clear and specific. You got to state exactly what you need or what you're struggling with. If you can, offer a solution. Show how those boundaries serve everybody. Be professional, but be firm. Maintain respect without apologizing for your needs. And it's okay if you do apologize, because you're putting yourself first, and that's okay. I've learned that the hard way. But be consistent. Don't say it's going to be this way today, and then 2 days from now, be like, oh, who cares? Because again, that's one of those boundaries that you need to make firm, because if you get out of that routine, it's hard to get back into that routine. All right, so we're going to talk about some friendships and our boundaries. Our friendships sustain us, but unhealthy friendships can drag our energy down. It can lead us into relapse, and it can definitely pull you away from your recovery. So we've got a couple red flags that we talk about when it comes to boundaries. If you have friends that pressure you to use, to drink, to do anything negative that affects anything that you're having a hurt, habit, or hang-up about, that's a red flag. If they don't respect your boundaries, or they don't respect your recovery, that's a red flag. If they use you emotionally or financially, that's a red flag. If they do a lot of gossiping or they create a lot of drama, it's another red flag. And relationships where you're always giving the support and not receiving can be a red flag. And then if you have those people that don't want to take no for an answer, that's a red flag. So we need to look for some healthy boundaries and some healthy friendships. And if you have that, you give them availability and you give them time. You make sure that you're there for them, but you're not always there for them. Sometimes you have to let people do things on their own. I learned that the hard way. I have some great friends and some great co-leaders that have given me boundaries, that have given me time. But they're also like, hey, when are you going to get right? And they're like, he hasn't yet, so whatever. But I'm trying. We're a work in progress. Nobody's perfect. Right? So, you've got to have those healthy friendships boundaries. Like I said, make sure that you have time, that they give time, that it's reciprocating. Make sure that they're clean, that they're sober, that they have a healthy state of mind, that they don't bring you down into your recovery, that they're there emotionally for you, that help you in tough times, but they're also there not to carry your baggage. And if you need a helping hand, don't use that. It's okay sometimes to say, hey, I need some help. I was the first one to have to learn that's a hard thing to say. Because for a long time, I'm like, I can do it myself, I can do it myself, I can do it myself. But the problem was, I couldn't. I thought I was Superman, but I wasn't. I was just Eloy. And even back then, I wasn't even Eloy, I was just Chris. And I didn't ask for help. Not just with friends, but even with my family. And I'll get into that in a minute, too. But it was one of those things that if I'd have done things different the first time I was getting in trouble, where would I be today? I don't know. I always think that I'd host the Tonight Show, but that would never really happen. But I'd like to think that's what would happen. But if I'd asked for help back then, would my trajectory be the same that it is today? Probably not. Would I be on the stage? Absolutely not, probably. That was contradicting, I think, what I said. But, yeah, thanks. But I'm glad things happened the way they did. I'm glad I went through all those jail stints and all that prison time, because I came out with a different focus and a different perspective, and I gained so much back that I had destroyed for a long time because I didn't set boundaries, because my family couldn't set boundaries, because we didn't know how to communicate. We didn't know how to understand each other. But I'm glad I went through that, because I have all of that and more now, and I couldn't be any more thankful for that, because I have more than I can ever need in life. I don't need much. I'm simple. I think I need more because I have all this room sometimes, but I don't. I'm happy and I'm content where I'm at because I have things that I can look forward to, things that I can appreciate more than I have in the past. So we're going to talk about our family. Because if anybody's struggled, if anybody's had an addiction, if anybody's been through anything, we know that the people that we hurt the most are our family. I hurt my brother, I hurt my mom, and I hurt my dad, my daughter, and even my son that I didn't know for a long time that I had. I hurt him too, because I wasn't there. So we have to make sure that we're right with our families, because sometimes That's all we have. And then sometimes your family's 8 hours away. But it's okay because they want to see me now, and I want to see them. Family relationships are the often most complex relationships we're going to have. Family members are going to be your greatest supporters, but they're also going to be your greatest trigger. And sometimes we have challenges when it comes to our family. Sometimes our parents want to control things. That's just what it is. I'm that way with my daughter sometimes. Like, I want the best for her. My son, pray. Steadfast, pray. But that's sometimes our nature, is we want to control things. But if you let your parents control you, it's not a good thing sometimes. They may have what they think is your best intentions, but at the same time, they may be hurting you more than you're letting them know. Don't compete with your siblings for attention or resources. I did that for the longest time with my brother. We fought for my dad's attention. At least we thought we did. I was always jealous of him, and I've said that I was always jealous of my brother because he always had my dad's attention, always. And I just wanted half of what he had. And I would do everything that I could to try to get my dad's attention. I would join sports that I was no good at. I'm not a soccer player. I'm not a football player. I didn't want to run cross country. I just wanted my dad to give me attention, and I did all that stuff for what? To get out of breath, to still have the same attention that he was giving me already, which was very little? Or I thought. But it was one of those things that he didn't understand me, and I didn't understand him, so it was hard to communicate. We didn't set boundaries. We didn't know how to communicate. We didn't know how to talk. We didn't know anything about each other. And I was in high school, and I've lived with him my whole entire life at that point. If you have extended family, sometimes they're full of drama too. I had a grandmother who was from Florida, and in small town Florida, they loved gossip a lot. It's one of those things that you've got to put a cap on it. And I know sometimes if your grandmother's talking about Miss Mary that lives down the street that's got 17 cats or whatever, that's one thing, but it's when it gets to be the damaging, hurtful things that hit home. Those are the types of gossip that you need to put a cap on to say, no, we can't have that. And some families, they use obligations as a manipulation. Well, you really need to come here for Christmas, or we really need to see you for this, or we need something like that. That's hurtful, and that doesn't help. And if you don't have great open lines of communication, they may, again, have that perfect intention to do something, but it's not coming across the right way. So it's going to backfire on them, and it's going to hurt you, or it's going to hurt them, and it's not what you need. And I think one of the biggest things when we talk about boundaries is you've got to communicate, plain and simple. It's okay to say no. If anybody's had to learn that word in this sanctuary, it's probably been me the most. Because when somebody asks me to do something, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Then I put it on my calendar. I'm like, what am I thinking? I can't take anything else on. But that's for another time, another day. So, you have to understand what a supporting and enabling behavior is. A supporting behavior is encouraging those things. It's celebrating your progresses. It's offering that encouragement and that emotional things that you may need sometimes. It's respecting your independence, but it's also maintaining those boundaries that you want to set. But then you have those enabling boundaries that sometimes get blurred. And sometimes you're protecting someone from a consequence. You're making it easier for them to continue that unhealthy lifestyle, that unhealthy behavior. You're taking responsibility for their choices. You're sacrificing your own well-being, and you're violating your own boundaries to help somebody. But we can limit, and we can talk about some ways that you can help your family. You can call, you can text, you can make a visit. It doesn't have to be a required visit. If you can do it, say, hey, I want to come see you. That's great. Do something like that. But you have to protect yourself. Then, one thing that I had to learn the hard way, because I was always pulling and pulling and pulling from my family, is those financial boundaries. It's okay to ask for that help, but don't let it become something that you're doing constantly. Because I remember growing up, when I moved out at 17 and I was living in the trunk of my car because I was embarrassed and didn't want anybody to see where I would live in the trunk of my car and park at a random complex every night. I didn't ask for help. And when I started asking for help, I kept asking, and then I just stopped asking and just started taking and took until like I came to the house one day to steal and the locks were changed and there was security cameras. They caught on. So it's okay. Learn what a loan is and learn what a gift is. If you're loaning something, that's your intention to pay it back, because we also know that if we take, and the Bible says that we are indebted to the loaner. So don't take a loan out unless you can pay for it, and it's okay to accept gifts if it's reasonable. I mean, if y'all want to gift, like, any of us here, a couple $100,000, most of us leaders will take it, I promise you. Like, we got bills to pay and everything else. But we won't, because that's not what we do. Nobody said amen to that one over there. Okay, cool. Gotcha. If I win the lottery, I know who I'm not talking. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, we also need to talk. I got to laugh because it's kind of been serious tonight. Nobody's making too much noise, so. Anyways, no, thanks. Whoever that was, appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about some behavioral boundaries that we need to consider with our family as well. Standards of how you're going to let your family treat you. What behaviors you're going to let your family give and take from you. But you also have to make sure that you have the right limit to contact those unhealthy family members. Don't ever write them out, because you never know when the Lord's going to finally work on them and say, hey, it's time. Don't write them out, because you never know when you're going to need them if they're at that point, or they're going to need you when they're at that point. So we also got to have some boundaries that have different roles, especially when it comes to our parents. Remember, you are an adult, and you're entitled to make your own decisions. You don't have to justify your decisions to your parents. I did as an adult, but okay, that was because I wasn't living right. You can limit your advice giving, and you can limit their advice giving. And again, it comes back to saying no. It's okay to say no. And if you say no and they balk at it, give them a small, brief description. Don't try to elaborate. Just say, hey, this is why. It's because I have to take care of myself. I have to worry about my recovery. And with your siblings, something that me and my brother talked about on our truck ride down to Dallas, from Houston to Dallas one day, we've got to learn that we're equal in our parents' relationship. They're getting older. They need both of us. We've got to be equal. One can't be more than the other. We've got to remember that my actions don't affect him unless I'm directly affecting him. But my actions also don't affect his responsibility. And I'm not responsible for my brother's behavior, and he's not responsible for mine. And again, we can set limits in our involvement with each other. And I promise you, my brother did that. When I got out of prison the last time, he'd already been married and had a kid that I had never met. And he was like, I don't know when I want you to meet my family, because I don't know if I can trust you. He set that boundary. But with hard work and persistence and keep doing the same things that I'm doing, coming to recovery, going to work, saving, doing all these things, he saw that I was serious this time, that I wanted to change, that he's like, okay, you can meet him. And I wish I had a better relationship with him. And he lives in Hawaii. I really want a great relationship with him. He lives in Hawaii. Do you know that it was 74 degrees last week in Hawaii while we were negative, it felt like? I joked in our group message with my family. I said, last year I lived in a camper when it got below or near zero. This year I'm in an apartment. Next year I'm going to the beach. Plain and simple, I'm going to the beach. No. I'll be here toughing it out, because there's no place I'd want to be on a Monday night besides the beach. Yeah, exactly. Amen. All right. We got to talk about some things with our children real quick. I know I'm kind of getting close on time. So with your children, you've got to be a parent that is responsible, and don't be a helicopter parent. You need to set boundaries with your kids. You can't be your kid's best friend and the parent at the same time. You've got to protect your recovery, and you've got to make sure that you know that they are struggling too. You've got to protect their recovery. And if you model healthy boundaries, they're going to model those same things. If you model healthy relationships and healthy recovery, they're going to do the same thing. So the hardest one we got to do is talk about ourselves now. So why do boundaries with ourselves matter? Because we can monitor our own behavior and create our healthy structures. We can keep ourselves safe and we can keep ourselves healthy. We can show ourselves again that we matter, and we can prevent ourselves from sabotaging ourselves, having regression, but most importantly, we're going to build our own self-respect. Some common areas to talk about for ourselves is obviously substance, abusive behaviors, abusive relationships, anything like that. So if I'm going to create a self-boundary for myself, I'm not going to go to the bar and drink. I struggled with alcohol for a long time. I'm not going down to whatever the club is here in town anymore. I remember what it was years ago. I don't know what it is anymore, but I'm not going there. A, I'm too old. And by like 9 o'clock, I'm in bed now. So, right? So, I'm not going, okay? But no matter how much I'm tempted to go, I'm not going. I'm not going to put myself in that situation because I know if I go, I'm going to want to drink again. So I'm not going to put myself there. I'm also going to make sure that I have time, and I'm going to have self-care. I'm going to protect myself from my recovery. I'm going to go to meetings. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to have time of self-reflection. I'm going to journal. I'm going to do some of those things. I'm going to continue to set non-negotiables in my daily life. I'm going to read my Bible more. This one said exercise. I'm going to kind of not talk about that one. I'm going to journal more. I always got to joke about that. We got to talk about our financials too. We got to set financial boundaries. Trust me, when I was making great money, I'm like, man, I could buy anything and everything. Now that I have the spot to put it in, no way, but I'm going to buy it anyways. Because I don't need it, I want it. There's a difference. But you've got to stick to a budget. Don't make impulsive purchases. And I did not write that for anybody over here. I promise that was just something that I typed. I'm not naming names in over here. If somebody elbowed somebody. I'm just kidding. But you also got to live within your means. That's one of those things. So then, we're also going to talk about social and relational. Don't always overshare everything that's going on in your life. You don't need to know that my fingernail finally fell off after slamming into my truck brakes 2 months ago. You don't need to know that. Keep those things to a minimum, you know? Exactly. Ooh, right. So, maintain privacy about your recovery, unless you're talking to your sponsor or your accountability partner or somebody that you trust. And not being available for everyone at all times of the day is okay. There you go. Right. So, we also need to make sure that we're taking care of our mental health. Don't blame yourself if things change and your boundaries have to change with it. Don't blame yourself. It's okay. Seek help if you're struggling. And manage, and Jeff will like this one, manage that self-talk, that negative self-talk, and that shame. So we're going to set a couple boundaries, and how do we do that? First, we need to identify those areas of our life. Reflect. Again, if it's your finances, if it's substance abuse, if it's alcohol, pornography, if it's anything like that, identify it. I always talk about I like to journal. I learned that from Pastor Jeff. There's nothing wrong with journaling at all. It's not for everybody, but it's okay. I know that there's some people that they'll put things up on their mirrors and stuff like that. That's cool too. If it helps remind you, do it. If you need to put a reminder on your phone, put a reminder on your phone. If you need to put a note in there, put a note in there. It's okay. As long as you see that you're making progress and you're not going backwards, it's fine. Absolutely. Create boundaries reflecting what goals and values you have. Your boundaries should align with what's truly important to you, not what others think you should do or what you should have. And don't set too many boundaries at one time. Start with 2 or 3 if you can. And then as you make those more permanent and they become a part of your daily routine, then add another one, and another one, and another one, if you need to. Use compassionate accountability. When you slip, and all of us are going to slip, that's just a given. There's still ice outside. We're going to slip. Right? When you slip, be gentle with yourself. Shame and harshness lead to giving up. Instead, explore why you crossed that boundary. Adjust that boundary if it's unrealistic. Make a plan to improve. Forgive yourself and recommit. That hard one is forgive yourself. And keep tracking and reinforcing your boundaries. Again, write those boundaries down however you need to. Celebrate those small wins and adjust what's going on as you need to. So, ensure that your boundary doesn't infringe on other people's rights. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Respect your boundaries. So, I say all this. And how does this tie into recovery? How does this tie into the Bible? How does this tie into our everyday lives? Well, great. I'm glad you asked. So, there's a couple key principles that come out of the Bible on how we can do boundaries. If we're going to guard our heart and our mind, Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, and for everything you do flows from it. In Romans 12:2, it encourages us to not conform to the world, allowing for discernment of God's will. And that's the thing, too. If you're setting boundaries, there's probably a chance that God's been like, hey, you need to set that. You're going to know if he's talking to you. You'll know. If it's a personal responsibility that we need to take ownership of from, Galatians 6:5 tells us, for each one should carry their own load. In 1 Thessalonians 5:21-22 advocates testing all things and rejoicing evil. So we got to have clear communication. We have to have clear self-control. So Matthew 5:37 teaches us, all you need is a simple yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. And Proverbs 25:28 says, a person without self-control is like a city with broken walls. But Jesus was the perfect person that set boundaries. He prioritized quiet time. He would frequently withdraw from the crowds to go pray, even when the crowds were demanding and they wanted his attention. And he said no to demands. Jesus did not immediately rush to heal Lazarus, to holding to his own timing despite others' urgency. And he had direct communication. Jesus used questions to challenge people rather than always giving them direct answers. So there's a couple takeaways. Boundaries are acts of self-love. If we set boundaries, we say, I matter, my well-being matters, and my recovery matters. Boundaries protect our recovery. They keep us safe from our triggers, our toxic relationships. They help us in our struggles with hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And they also help with situations that will pull you away from your healing. Boundaries take practice. If I'd have kept playing soccer or football or running cross country, I probably could have been great. But as soon as my dad didn't show up to the meet, I was like, I'm done. But if I'd have kept practicing, who knows? So we have to keep practicing our boundaries. You'll feel uncomfortable at first, but that discomfort doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Boundaries are for you, not to control others. You're managing your own behavior and what you will or will not accept. You can't control other people's responses, and that's okay. Some boundaries are going to be hard. Some are going to be easy. Know which ones are which and be consistent within that framework. Healthy people respect your boundaries. If someone consistently disrespects your boundaries, that tells you something important about that relationship. I kind of was looking for another job out of state a while back. I was frustrated, didn't want to be here. But I also realized that I was putting a lot of different things first, that I was going against a lot of things that I had set. And I also realized that if I move somewhere else, I have to restart a lot of things. And I didn't want to do that after I thought about it, because I have a lot of people that keep me in a boundary, that keep me going in the right direction, that love on me and encourage me, and I can't rebuild that anywhere else. And if I do go somewhere else, am I going to be as strong there than I am here? Because healthy people respect our boundaries. And I had some that told me, is that really what you need to do? Is that really what you want to do? Or one of them was like, are you done being dumb? I think so. We'll see. You can change your boundaries, not other people. And your boundaries are not always permanent. So, hopefully I've taught y'all something tonight. If not, tell Jeff and he'll fire me. If I have, take what I'm saying, the serious parts, and implement them. I'm telling you, if you put boundaries in your life, you're going to reap a whole bunch of different things that you never expected. Your friendships, your relationships are going to go stronger than you've ever imagined. And the thing is, we need friendships. We need relationships. We need each other. We can't do your recovery for you, just like you can't do my recovery, but I can be there to encourage you. I can be there to love on you. I can be there to pray for you. But I have to also make sure that I'm there at a distance to not hurt you or me. But we need each other, and we need those healthy boundaries. Thanks for letting me share. Thanks for being a part of it tonight. Thanks for coming out.